Hello, seasoners. Welcome back to another episode of the Travel and Tourism Podcast, my first season. Today's guest had an incredible journey with Club Med from 1990 to 1995, starting as an aerobics geo in Moorea before rising to choreographer in 1993. Her career took her to breathtaking resorts in Guadeloupe, Phuket, Moorea, and Cancun, among others. Before Club Med, she was a cheerleader and model, and she holds a communications degree from the University of California, Santa Barbara. Originally from Moraga, now calling Folsom, California home, please join me in welcoming the amazing Kendra, Courey, Blake. Hey, Kendra, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Greg. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to be here too. And let me just start off by thanking Chris Holden, friend of ours, for the referral, because without Chris, this interview would not be taking place. So thank you, Chris, very much.
Well, and also thank you to you, because Chris was one of my very favorite people in Club Med, and I didn't know her married last name. So I've been trying to track her down for the last 15 years. And because of your podcast, I was able to reconnect with her.
Isn't that amazing, right? That's so nice. That's so nice to hear. Thank you so much for that.
So cool.
Let's get into it because we have a lot to cover, with you. You had quite the interesting career. Briefly, you wanted to teach aerobics and travel. You thought this would be a great job. Someone at your sorority kind of helped you out, right?
Yeah, it was actually over the summer. Janet Radin had come back to the sorority house, and she was talking about working for Club Med and what a great experience it was. And I kind of filed that in the back of my mind, like it would be amazing if I could teach aerobics and travel. So I was working at Lickety Split Frozen Yogurt, and I was teaching a bunch of classes at Gold's Gym. And I just started to really think about the idea and like it. So I decided to reach out to them in January.
Yeah. And you interviewed in San Francisco, but I don't think they had a position open at the time. And then this is crazy, but in a way it's you preparing for Club Med. You were teaching about 18 aerobics classes a week at high-end clubs in Walnut Creek in Lafayette.
Yes, I was. In fact, I wasn't even sure. I had gotten the note that had said I was hired, but I didn't realize how serious it was. So I just thought I'll just wait and see if they give me a call.
This interview, do you remember anything about it?
Well, I remember it was in San Francisco, and it was done as a group interview initially. And they asked, all kinds of questions. I had a kind of a minor in fitness, and I also had my international ACE aerobic certifications. So I was definitely qualified on the aerobic side. What I didn't realize is about the shows. And that was one of the questions they asked me, is if I was comfortable dancing. And I said that I was. I had been a dancer most of my life. So it ended up working out pretty good. Now, I couldn't speak French, but I did take 3 years of Spanish in high school.
Because you couldn't speak French, they said, you know what, we're going to send this girl to Moorea her first season, right?
Oh, exactly.
Okay. Not a bad gig, right? You're going to paradise right off the bat, right? I mean,
Greg, it was the weirdest thing. I came home from teaching a class, and my mom told me that Club Med was on the phone, and I took the call, and they said, well, we have a club that is opened up for you, and we would like to send you to Tahiti. And I just started jumping up and down. I could not believe my good fortune. And the amazing thing was they overnighted my ticket. And when I opened it, it was first class.
yes, you and I share that in common. Both our first seasons were first class. We thought this was totally normal. And then you get to a village and some geos that had been there before you a couple of years. Do you remember their reaction when they found out you flew first class? Yes, I sure remember mine.
Yeah, they definitely thought I was fortunate. It was not a team of mostly American geos. It was really a lot of Australians and Europeans. So they didn't go quite so hard on me. as I'm sure if it was all Americans.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, like I got. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm assuming you arrived probably at nighttime, right?
I flew actually all through the night. I must have gotten in at 4 or 5 in the morning and took the bus and arrived at the club actually about 5 in the morning. And they were there in the geos and their parios and cocktails, and the we walked over the koi pond to get to the general meeting area. I was just one of many people that were arriving at that time. It wasn't the welcome committee for me, per se.
So you get there at 5, and do they immediately tell you you have a stretching class at 7? So hurry up, or anything like that happen? Okay.
Well, the funny thing was, I was so ready to go. I was just so excited to be there that they initially told me, well, go ahead and get, settled in and come out later for dinner, and we'll really get you up and going tomorrow. But I said, I'm ready to go now. So I did end up teaching about 5 hours later my first aerobics class.
At what point do you meet the chief of village, Leonello? Is it Bertet or Bertet? Do you remember how you pronounce his name? Is it French?
Bertet,
Bertet? Is he
I think.
French or Italian, this chief?
Oh, I think he's Italian.
Okay. Now, did you know how many bosses you had when you got there? You had
I
never been, right, to Club
I
Med
had never
prior?
been. I had no idea what was going on, but I met Jennifer Steidel, who ended up being just my guardian angel through my Club Med experience. And then I'd also met
Well, excuse me.
Chris.
Yeah, just one second. Let's mention that Jennifer Steidel was a chief of sports, and at the time in 1990, there was probably only 2, right? So it was pretty rare to have a female chief of sport, right? As you just probably discovered later.
Yes, exactly. So she got me, had introduced me to Chris, the land sports guy, and he really took me under his wing and showed me the ropes. It was funny to go from doing an aerobics class in a beautiful gym with a headset speaker to just a boom box out on the sand. So it was a little bit of a culture shock on the aerobic front.
And did people do your classes in a bathing suit? Because I talk about this often, where people would show up in a Speedo, to do step and whatnot. Did this ever happen to you?
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, especially because the low impact class I taught right out on the beach under beautiful tree, and I used bocce balls as weights. So I was always picking up people coming from the beach. Now, for my later classes, my high impact classes, they were taught in a little bit different spot, but same kind of thing. They, especially at this club, people were in their bathing suits.
Okay. But you find time, to see the island. I believe you could rent mopeds. You took a helicopter trip. And here's something I want to ask you about. So you actually visited what they call Marlon Brando Island, which was Tetiaroa, which he purchased a 99-year lease in 1966 for $270,000. It's worth millions now. What's it like going to that island?
It was crazy beautiful. It was the first time I had really been out on one of those excursion boats. So I had gotten a little seasick, but by the time we got to, you could see the island in the distance, it was not at all built up. I mean, literally, there was nothing there. But we went and did this walk around the island, and the excursion geo was so sweet. She kept taking pictures of me everywhere. I gave her my camera, and she kept taking pictures of me on the palm tree, me on the beach, me, all these great things. And unfortunately, that camera ended up disappearing with that roll in it. So I never got to see the developed pictures. But if I close my eyes, I can picture how beautiful it was.
Okay. So you're in Tahiti about 4 months, and then I think you start getting wind of a couple of people on your team, Jen, Patrick Scuba, Chris. They're talking about Turks and Caicos for their next season. Now, did you want to go to Turks or not?
So it was the funniest thing. I was just getting settled into Tahiti, and I had the option to stay and continue in Tahiti since I was there only 3 months. But I was super competitive and I worked really hard for Jen, and Patrick and the scuba team was great, and Buddy, the animator, and Chris from Land Sports. They were all talking about Turks. So I was like, I have to go there. I have to do whatever I need to do to go with the dream team. So I talked Jenna into taking me to Turks.
Okay, so she puts in I guess, a good word for you with Carlos Castro, your chief in Turks, right?
Yeah, she actually brought a number of people from her team. That happened a lot in the clubs that I worked at. Either the GM would, the chief of village would bring a team, or the chief of sports would bring a team of people.
All right, so you get to Turks in about June of 1990. You meet
Yes.
Carlos. You're going from one beautiful place to another, but now I guess you're with more Americans now. I'm assuming you didn't fly first class the second time, right?
No, I did
Okay.
come in on one of those world famous New York,
Oh, the charter,
the
right?
charters.
Yes,
Yes,
you got the party started before they got to the resort, right?
exactly. So definitely different than first class, but was very different clientele than we had had in Tahiti, but they were so much fun. The interesting thing is Turks and Caicos is more of a, I don't want to say deserted island, but it doesn't have as much greenery.
Well, at
Whereas,
the time, yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, sure. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Well, Tahiti to me sounds like one of the most beautiful places on earth, right?
lush and green for sure.
Yeah, I'm jealous you got to work there. They didn't have a wild dolphin named Jojo there, did they? No. You
No, and we'd heard about JoJo almost from the day that I got there, and so we were always on the lookout to see JoJo. But it wasn't until I must have been there 2 or 3 months, and JoJo finally decided to make an appearance. So that felt pretty good. The main thing that I did in Turks was I got certified to go scuba diving.
Now we open water one course, correct?
Yes. And Pat, the scuba and the chief of scuba, was one of my best pals there. And he kept encouraging me to get certified. It was a great opportunity. Joanne, the bartender, was my pal, and she was going to do it also. So Pat personally took very good care of us and took us out on our first couple of dives. And I just, I fell in love with scuba diving. It was amazing.
Did you get to do a night dive while you were there?
I did. Actually, my first, we did a couple of small dives, and then I'm not sure if you ever got a chance to do the dive to Davy Jones' locker.
Yes.
That was my first kind of deep dive. And then I had an opportunity to do a night dive. And I remember jumping in the water. And when you're on the boat, you feel so heavy. But once you're in the water, you feel so light, like you're flying. And when everything is dark around you, it really is a surreal experience.
You're right. It's kind of like being in space, right? With the flashlight and everything in the darkness.
Exactly. And one of the things is you get confused about which way is up and down. And so they said, make sure you just follow the bubbles. If the bubbles go up, that's the direction you want to head. Keep that in
Yeah,
mind.
I didn't have that problem. Mine was inventing a story that there was a shark behind me because you can only really see in front of you, right? So if you get it in your
Oh
head there's
my
a
God.
shark following you, then you're done for. And that was my problem was myself trying to stop myself from thinking about that.
That would have put me into a panic attack. I'm glad
Yeah,
I didn't have those feelings.
maybe it's good we didn't work together because I probably would have teased you on that scuba boat before we jumped in.
Um, right. Well, it it was really neat. And the GMs there were so great. I remember we used to get all these great care packages, and somebody who had come to the club the first week I was there ended up coming, and like a month and a half later, and she brought me new aerobic shoes and rubber bands and aerobic outfits. The GMs were so generous and kind. And then, of course, everybody I'm sure remembers getting the beads at the end of the week. Everybody.
Yes, bar beads. Yeah, that was during the time of bar beads before the bar tickets, right?
Exactly. And the other kind of funny thing that we did is that weekly sports show. And one of the tricks they did was the water skiing in the pool. So the whole sports team would pull one of the water ski geos from end to end and the swimming pool. So that was kind of fun.
Sandpiper's coming up as your next season, December 1990 with Bernard Vigier. Now, do you decide to go to Sandpiper? That's where they needed you.
Yes. So Steve Miller had come to Turks to replace Jennifer Steidel. She had to get to her next club. And so I had spoken to Steve, and he took me to Sandpiper with the land sports, and I'm trying to think of who else came with him, but he ended up bringing a bit of a team with him. So I had gone from gorgeous, island places to now working in the States, which was a very different experience.
Yeah, now you can go shopping and see a movie, right?
It was the weirdest thing to be like totally submerged in Club Med and then go out to the shopping mall and walk around, and everything was just like status quo. Everybody's just regularly living their life. They had no idea that we're staying up till all hours of the night, getting up super early, all the crazy stuff that a geo life is. Walking around the shopping mall was really bizarre.
You have someone here. It's one of my favorite people, Patrick Serva. So long before he became a chief of sport and chief of village, he was a choreographer here, right?
So Patrick Serva is my other guardian angel. He came to Sandpiper really not speaking any English at all. He had career aspirations to be chief of village, and he knew that he needed to learn to speak English. So he was a choreographer, and somehow we were able to communicate all through the practices. There was a girl, Janet, and I, that Patrick was teaching us all of the dances, and we were kind of his star dancers, but he ended up putting me in the star roles. So I learned all of his dances and really fell in love with being on the shows. We learned kind of a crazy dance towards it was kind of the middle of the season, Rhythm Nation that Janet Jackson won, and it was quick and it had a lot of fast moves.
Very difficult.
But it was really
fun.
Yeah,
very difficult. One of the hardest ones I've ever had to learn.
Well, you've got to be a good dancer then, Greg, because not everybody can hack it.
I wasn't. I think they threw me in there to be Guy Candy. I don't know what I was doing there, but then eventually they're like, you know what? Go back row by the curtain. That's your spot. Okay, no problem. Okay. You also worked with another guy here, so his name's come up before. So tell me what you thought about Jack stretching, and if you can tell the people listening who he was.
Yes. So Jack started his Club Med career, I think, when he was 65. He was the stretching geo. So he owned a condominium just outside the club, but he would teach a stretch class. And this guy was Mr. Flexible, and he would come up at the dinner tables. He would do a headstand up and just right in front of everyone. Okay. And he would do
sorry, it's always makes me I just can't imagine you're eating the roast beef and this old guy comes and does a headstand on your table, right? Basically.
Yes.
Okay.
And he's obviously old, but he's super fit, and you're not expecting him to be able to do that. It was crazy. But he was a lot of fun. He had us over for a couple of sports parties. Had a really cool picture with the whole sports team lying on his bed looking up. He's got a mirrored ceiling, I guess.
Oh boy.
So it ended up being a really cute picture. I had some great geos that I had worked there with. Keeling. Tennis was one of my favorite people. She worked with me on, you might have heard of the show Starlight Express.
Yes, Patrick Serva's favorite show of all time.
Yes, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen. We were roller skating throughout the entire theater. So there was a ramp that would go down the side. So the stage was about 5 feet off the ground. And as you go down each time, there was always a couple people that would spin out. And then you'd have to kind of huff and puff when you got to the other side because you'd have to push yourself up the top. But people loved that show. It was beautiful.
Yes. And around this time, the Gulf War starts. So GOs are required to stay a year. So you stay a year at Sandpiper. You go to Guadalupe 91 with Chief of
Yep.
Village Lino Benzoni. You're reunited with Jennifer Steidel, your chief of sports. And I think it's around this time, because you got Rhythm Nation down cold, that you kind of decided to be a choreographer, or you wanted to be a choreographer.
Yeah, so I went to our chief of village and asked him, well, him and the choreographer, I said, I know this great dance. It'd be fun if I was able to teach it and we could do it at the shows at night. So they let me do it and I loved it so much. I decided, you know what? I know Patrick's shows all very, very well. I would love to be a choreographer. And that kind of was the beginning of that.
And then you have to do a stage. So you get put on the stage, and I believe they send you to Cancun for the stage, right? 92 with
Yeah. So the way that all tied together is originally I was going to go on the Club Med cruise ship back with Bernard Vigier. But because I wanted to get into choreography, I reached out to Patrick Serva, who was in Cancun. And I asked specifically if I could do my stage with Patrick, and everybody agreed. So I went back and started being the choreographer kind of in training there. It was great for Patrick because I already knew all of his dances. So it took a lot of pressure off of him as far as teaching the shows.
How many were you on the stage? Do you remember?
It was just me. I
Okay.
did go to 2 week long stage later in the season that was at Sandpiper, but the training really was for the whole season.
Well, you still wind up on the Club Med one in 92 with Bernard Vigier, but boutique. So tell everyone how it happens that you just do a stage, but then you're a boutique on the Club Med one. What happened there?
So I started and I loved being the choreographer for sure. And I knew that was the direction I wanted to go. But the Club Med cruise ship is such a unique opportunity. And I knew that Bernard was still there with some of my team. And so the aerobics job was already taken and the choreographer job was already taken. But I decided to work in the boutique where I met one of my very best friends, Lily. She was working there as in the boutique as well. My French still wasn't super good, and she was always there to help me when I got in a tough spot.
So you did the Caribbean. I think you visited about 29 islands. Did you like your time aboard the ship?
I loved it. So we had 3 different tours that we did, and I must have seen 29 different islands. We went all the way down to Tortuga, which is just off of South America. And there's something different about being on cruise ship. You just every day is a different port of call. We had amazing tours. I remember going to Virgin Gorda and there's like this tunnel grotto that you need to walk through to get to the private beach that's where the Club Med kind of had set up for the day. And so I was walking back and forth, taking geos through the grotto to get over to the private beach. We also had lobster, all you can eat lobster barbecues out on the beach. It was pretty cool. I also remember being up in the weight room, sitting on the rowing machine and looking out the window kind of as we're moving. And I was feeling almost like I was the one moving the boat just because it was so pretty.
Okay. So you never got seasick or vertigo or anything like that, right?
I didn't, but I did hear that you burn way more calories when you're working on a cruise ship because your body is constantly trying to get you to balance, and that extra energy makes you burn more calories. So I don't know if that was an urban legend, but it was
Hey, you had me fooled. Okay.
it makes sense to me if you're
Yeah.
constantly moving your body. My parents also came to visit. That was nice. They loved it. I mean, it's a different kind of boat that can get into much shallower waters than any other cruise ship out of there, the way it's built. So we were able to go places people weren't able to go. It was so pretty. In fact, the chief of sports ended up getting married, Bruno, that was his name. And he ended up marrying the aerobic instructor at sunset. So we had the whole place was set up for a wedding. And it was amazing because they got married just as the boat turned and we had the sunset behind them. So I
I,
loved my Club Med One experience. I did get a chance to go out scuba diving to St. Lucia and went to the capsized boat dive. That was pretty neat. There was a lot of things I was able to take advantage of being on the Club Med One.
and after the Club Med one, you leave the North American sector the first time. You get to Asia. You're in Phuket in 93 with Ye. You're reunited with Patrick Serva, the choreographer, but he's a chief of animation now, and you're the choreographer, right?
Yes.
Just one sec, Kendra. How do you get to Phuket? Did you fill out a dream sheet or something?
Nope. I again reached out to Patrick and reached out to Ye, both of who I had worked for with before, and they totally pushed for me and helped to get me there. And I arrived, and it was the first and only season where I was the only American on the team.
That's pretty interesting.
It was funny. I remember, Bastille Day is always a big day, whatever club you're at. But I was the sole Geo dressed up pouring champagne on the 4th of July, trying to promote my country because I was the only one there to do it.
Please tell me the story because, well, first I'll set it up because, when you work for Club Med, especially back in the early 90s, there's no newspapers, there's no telephone, there's no TV, you don't get news. So please tell me your Jurassic Park VHS bootleg story, please. I love this story.
So many people were fortunate enough when Jurassic Park first came out. It was a huge, big deal. Animation was just supposed to be gorgeous and fantastic. Well, it hadn't come to Thailand yet. And we got a bit of a story going amongst the GOs that somebody had a VHS tape and that we would all watch it in the GO room. And we're all excited going in there thinking, how fortunate we are. We get to see this big fancy movie that everybody's been talking about. And we look at the screen, and all of a sudden it becomes very apparent that it was not an actual legitimate VHS. Somebody had gone into the movie theater in the States and filmed it from their own camera. And that's what we were watching. So it was really very, very funny.
Yeah, but still, even with a cam copy, you're probably happy to see anything right at that point.
We were, but going back and seeing the movie as it was supposed to be in a huge theater was quite different than
Is
the
is that
experience.
what you did when you got home?
I did
Okay.
eventually see that. I mean, it's I don't know if you ever saw the Seinfeld episode where they were
Yes, I love that
filming.
episode. Yeah, Jerry was commissioned to
Yes,
Yes. And then George, yes, becomes the bootlegger after. Yeah.
Yes. So that's what I mean, that's what it was like. If the person watching the show was moving, you could feel them moving.
Oh yeah, you
But
hear popcorn, people eating popcorn and whatnot. Yeah, yeah. It's shadows come across the screen. Yeah, people walking in front of you.
some of the cool things that I really enjoyed when I was there, and I could not believe my good fortune, was that they had these massages right on the club, right on
Yes,
the grounds.
and very inexpensive, right?
Oh my God, I could die. It was $3 for an hour and
Yes.
$5 for an hour and a half. And it was amazing. You go in and the room's dark and it's got, you know, I don't know, like 20 different masseuses, and it's got the smelling smoke, and it was crazy. But I spent a lot of time there, just because it was such a great advantage. And then also I went to the Lady Boy show where it's all of these beautiful women. It's outside of the club, but
Yes, but
these beautiful
think
women, and you come to discover that they're actually not women at all. They're men. Their
yes,
costumes were so pretty.
yeah, exactly. And did you go to any of the kickbox fights at all while you were there, or no?
Did not see the kickbox.
Okay.
I did go to the Emerald Palace. I did go to 007 Island.
Oh, nice.
Uh, did go and see the elephants and the monkeys. Was able to see a lot of great things. It also was neat because that was the first club where, typically we'd have French and English, but now they were doing French and English and Korean and
Japanese,
Japanese and
Mandarin.
Mandarin.
Yes, it takes forever for the show to start. Okay. Yeah,
Yes,
five
but
languages.
yeah, we had a couple specific geos that were kind of like geo translators.
Yeah, like the PR geos would. Yeah, it would. Yeah, when I was in Indonesia, this would happen every night. So the show started always like 20 minutes late. Okay.
Yeah, you know
Yeah.
exactly what I'm talking about.
So from Phuket, you follow Ye and Patrick to Eleuthera, beautiful Eleuthera in 93. You get to see the pink sand beaches, right?
Yes. And that was my first club where we had a circus. So I got involved with Darwin, the late Darwin. Jillian from Mini Club eventually joined the trapeze team. So I got really into doing the trapeze, and I was able to do the trapeze show. It was the one that was in the theater. It was just a single trapeze, and it was with Darwin that we went through and did all of these tricks together. He was strong, amazing.
And you did something called the rope show. What's that?
Yeah, the rope, it's where I'm sure you've seen it if you've been to any of the circus shows, but it's just a rope like that you climb to go on the gym, but somebody at the bottom swings you around,
Oh, yes,
and
yes, yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so you're doing all these cool poses. And
And you
so
did this?
I did. I
Did you ever
did.
get, because at one point they spin you around. Did you get dizzy when that was
I
happening?
did get dizzy, and I wasn't the regular person for it. I filled in a couple times for it, but I did. I broke a blood vessel in
Yeah,
my eye
yeah,
just because of the G force
I know,
on
but
it.
that's common though. Yeah, enough people have been on the show talking about. I was just about to ask you if you that happened to you, and lo, it did. Okay.
Yeah, it did. The other cool thing that I remember from Eleuthera was the picnics, because we would take a private boat to a beach, and there was all kinds of sangria and games that we all played. It was pretty popular. I don't know, did they have the boat picnic when you were there?
No, I never worked at Luthra.
Oh, I'm
Unfortunately,
sorry.
I worked Columbus Island Paradise, but yeah, I never got the chance to work at Eleuthera. But I think while you were at Eleuthera, I think you were needed in Columbus for about 6 weeks, right? 94.
Yes. So I initially was thinking that I was done kind of, I'd been to all of the villages I wanted to see. And so I had thought that Eleuthera was going to be my last village. So I went home and I let them know that. But I got a call a couple days later and they said, well, we understand, that you're ready to move on to something else, but we really need someone to fill in for 6 weeks in Columbus Isle. And I was like, sure. I mean, I hadn't really gotten back into what I was going to do with my life. So I went to Columbus Isle, which was kind of such an honor because the village was so new and it was beautiful. It was another scuba club. So I got to scuba dive there. I also ran into my girlfriend, Shannon, who went to UC Santa Barbara. And I had met her as a GM the first time I was in Cancun. And so it was nice to see that she went from a GO to now she was the aerobic instructor in Columbus Isle.
Well, tell me, Kendra, as a choreographer, how did you deal with dumb GOs like me who either had two left feet, pretended not to dance, or liked the shows, hated rehearsal at midnight, or like how did you navigate all that? Was it hard for you?
Well, somebody gave me a really good piece of advice early on about rehearsals and everything is, you got to remember that this is not their main part of the job and that you have to be very kind and gracious and thankful. So every single time we did a rehearsal, I kind of was over the top with gratitude. And there was, maybe some
Excuse me, did you say you were over the top with gratitude?
with gratitude.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I wish you were my choreographer then. Okay. Okay.
Well, I learned that because my first season I was not like that and people didn't like me as much as I would have liked to have been liked.
What?
And once I learned that, you got to meet people where they are and be gracious, it just made all the difference in the world.
That's a
So
very good advice.
it ended up being great life advice in general. Yeah, and then I did a lot of one-on-one training throughout the day. So I met people, wherever they were and we did that. There was an occasion or two that I had to get a chief involved just because, people half the people are ready to practice and half of the people are hanging out at the bar.
Yeah.
So
Guilty. Okay. Well, after this 6 weeks in Columbus, I think you go to Cancun for your final season, the 94-95 with Yves Lebon. Joey Templin, I think he's a tennis geo, right? Is this where you meet Joey?
yes. So my last season in Cancun was really the most magical season for me. I had really got the choreographer thing down very well. I had Stephanie Johnson who came and did her stage with me. So she was kind of my under choreographer. So I had some help on teaching. And then I had Joe Templin and Bijou. Laurent was my animator, and they were both really good dancers. I had such a great team that season that I feel like I really had everything locked and loaded early on in the season. I also finally mastered, I really got into doing the water ski shows and was doing the top of the pyramid. You have the three people and then the two people and then the one person on top. And I was the one person on top and had added this cool backflip at the end when we were doing the water ski show. So the season was just going really, really, really good. Great people, great everything. And then there were 2 weeks that really kind of changed my life, if you'd like to hear about them.
I would. Please.
So the first one was AA, and they had the club for the week, and so there was no alcohol anywhere. and they did these meetings, and sometimes over at the Lapa Lapa, sometimes over at the disco where all the iguanas were, sometimes in the theater. And it just felt really very spiritual. And I just had finished that week feeling just really just calm, cool, and centered. And it was funny. The following week, then was the club was taken over by Atlantis. So we kind of go from one extreme to the other. But I was helping out in the restaurant to kind of, in between, you had the AA group that was going out, you had the Atlantis guys coming in, and I'm there up at the restaurant helping to seat people. And these two, well, first let me say I hadn't spent a lot of time around gay men, so I didn't know exactly what to expect. And these two guys come up to me, absolutely gorgeous, and look at me totally deadpan and say, "Where are all the women? I can't believe I don't see any women. What's going on?" And I didn't realize they were messing with me. So I totally straight face say to them, "Tell me your travel agent told you that this is going to be a all men week, that there aren't going to be any women here." And they're like, "No, no." And all of a sudden they both started laughing because they were there for Atlantis, and I had kind of fallen for that joke. So I took them over to the table with a whole nother group. I felt like I was back at a fraternity house. All of the big football players and workout guys were from LA. So I spent the big chunk of the week hanging out with them and doing the tea dances. So there were really two groups while I was there. There was the beautiful LA West Hollywood crew that was all in great shape. And then there was the New York crew that was a bit more cerebral. And it was kind of funny to hear the way they talked about each other. It was just a lot of fun. And after we had the white party. We had, well, it was a show that we were doing that week. It was called Speak of the Devil. And the show, it normally on every other week, there's the ending, the guy and the girl, the two leads end up together. But because we wanted to switch it up for Atlantis week, we did the guy ends up with the other guy. So they love that. They love that great finish. So it was pretty funny.
Very nice. Okay, Kendra, we're coming up to the part of the show I like to call shout outs, people you worked with, GOs that are no longer with us. Do you have some names for us?
Of course, a huge shout out goes to Jen Steidel, Patrick Serva, Kayleen, my buddy in so many places. Lily, if you're out there from the boutique on the Club Med cruise ship, I've got to find you. I miss you. I love you. Joey Templin, the man, Bijou, animator, Chris, aerobics, Teach and Annie in the kids club, Chris Land Sports, Carolyn Boutique, Dario on the water ski, Jason Watursky. I love that he used to say that was his last name. My sister Sandra came. She was at Village Village. Kelly, who was in water sports, and then a choreographer. Pat, who I love to this day, who is no longer with us, but his sweet brother John was also in scuba. Janet and Sandpiper. Bertrand, my swing dancing partner. Grant, Minnie, Shannon aerobics, Dude, Alon maintenance, Howie on land sports, all of the Mike water skis, the other Chris land sports, Allison, April, Becky in the kids club, Joanne bartender, reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you. Kelly in water ski, Pembroke in golf, Stephanie Johnson, James sailing, Holly, more the costume designer, Chente, my awesome sound engineer. And then, of course, it all circles back to Janet Radin, my big sister that at Santa Barbara that got me started.
Nice. That's a lot of people. You have a pretty good memory for those names.
They all hold a very special part in my heart for sure.
You and I share something because every now and then this question comes up. If you have to this day a recurring dream about Club Med, we found out you do, and it's very similar to mine because we both have anxiety in our dreams. Me, it's I forgot something to do. And with you, why don't you tell us what your recurring dream is about, the one that you have over and over again?
I show up at the club as I am today, and they're expecting me to put a show on for that evening. And I'm trying to get everybody out of the restaurant, but I can't remember the number. So I am just panicked all over the place. There's that dream. And then there's the last time I had the dream, I had that same stress. And all of a sudden, I'm looking around going, wait a minute, I'm married with kids. What am I doing back at back at Club Med?
That's right. And how come, I'm not a GM enjoying my vacation? Why am I
Yes,
having
but instead
anxiety
I'm
about a
panicked.
show? Yeah, which I did, 6, 7 days a week when I was there.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
wish mine would go away. I keep having them maybe more and more. Maybe it's because dummy me decided to start a podcast and ask people about their time there, so maybe that's what's increasing mine.
Seriously, Greg, if you're, I mean, you do have this on your schedule a
Yeah,
lot. I'm surprised you don't have it
yeah,
every night.
I'm dreaming more than I usually do, but believe me, it's always the same dream. I'm trapped there a
Well,
whole
I'm with
day.
you, brother. We both have that problem. It's crazy.
Tell me, Kendra, because I'm just curious. Like when you had the Atlantis week and you talked about Tim, did you stay in touch with Tim?
So Tim has ended up being one of my best friends for life. He totally helps me out. When I finished with Club Med, I lived with him in Los Angeles and he was in sales. So he got me interested in being in sales and he just has been a mentor and a big part of my life. I lived with him for 3 years in West Hollywood, but then decided to move to Orange County. But we spoke to him yesterday. We're still very close.
Oh, very nice. I like when a story ends like that. It's amazing.
Very fortunate. It's amazing how you never know where you're going to meet somebody who is going to change your life. And he definitely did for me.
Speaking of life, did you learn any life lessons from your time in Club Med?
I did. I did. The big one for me was always put other people first. That was something that Club Med really ingrained on to me, that you only have a short time to really make an impression and make somebody's day. Ask questions to get to know somebody. That was hugely helpful in sales. Always be the showman if you can. People want to see a show. And the one that really surprised me that stuck still to this day is don't talk to people wearing sunglasses because can't look you in the eye. That was a Bernard VGA thing, and I've never been able to break that. Also, I would say many hands make less work. I think of all the times we were moving stuff around in the theater and how much easier it was the more people that were there to help.
Because you have something on your list that I do the same. So it took you years to stop picking up trash. I still do it. I can't stop myself. I even say, I'm going to leave that there because I work at university and I go by it 3 times. No one's picked it up. I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not. And I wind up doing it. So you have to tell me how you broke that habit.
Greg, it was insane to be coming home and walking down. It was like over at my kids' elementary school or at the office or wherever it was. And it was a natural walk in scoop. So
Well, how did you
I,
break the habit of not saying hi to everyone too? Because that's another one you probably
I
left off your
haven't
list.
broken that.
Oh, okay.
In fact, my boys say I have that face that says, talk to me.
Oh, no. Okay.
And no matter where we go, we're always, whether it's the checkout line or we're out on a walk or we're taking the dogs, we're always
Okay.
talking.
Well,
So it is hard.
here's one last one. Are you ever in a grocery store or in your car and that Club Med song comes on and you have to stop your body from moving left to right and clapping? Does this happen to you?
Oh my God, for sure. Oh, Yes.
Do you stop yourself or you just go with it? What do you do?
I mentally, if I close my eyes, I can mentally go back to
You're
many
doing
of the places that I was at.
so
So,
you're doing hands up and YMCA in your head all the time then, right?
oh my God, especially YMCA's made a resurgence. So,
Yeah, it never goes away, that song,
oh my
does it?
God,
Right?
it never
Okay.
goes away. It just comes back over
Gonna
and over and
haunt
over.
us. Okay. Well, I did YMCA with the actual village people. When I met Chris Holden, and Turks, they were there that summer for a 70 celebration. So it was actually the only time I didn't mind doing it because they were right there on stage. So I thought this is surreal. Okay.
That is an amazing tale.
Right?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that you actually met them.
Yeah.
That would be for Club Med, that's like that's royalty.
Yeah. 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 And yeah, thanks again to Chris Holden for introducing me to you because you're as sweet as she says you are. So, thanks
Oh,
again, Chris.
yeah. Well, thank you for, Chris and I, she just sent me a little good luck on your podcast today.
Oh,
So,
nice. See,
so you connected me. So you should feel really good about that
well,
because she's someone important to me.
yeah, I hope all the people you shout out hear your episode, and they're gonna be happy just to hear your voice again. If they haven't heard your voice since the early '90s, they're in for a treat. And I do want to thank you, Kendra, for sharing your story with us here today. It's very kind of you to take the time.
Of course. Happy to talk about Club Med days for sure.
Right? I mean, what's not to like, right? Two XGOs talking about the good old days in the sun.
I love it. I love it.
Well, everyone, that was the one and only Miss Kendra. Again, thank you so much, so much, so much for being here, and we'll see you all next week. Say bye to everyone, Kendra.
Bye, everyone. Hands up, hands up.
Bye. See you next week.